Hello, church family. Pastor Seth here, and we're looking at January 22nd's reading. Now, I want to ask you a question. As we're looking at Job, I want to ask you this. Have you ever been in a conversation, or I guess an argument with a friend, when you realize several hours later that you guys are basically arguing the exact same thing? Well, that's what Job and his friends are doing. They're arguing very similar things, and we see that in this passage. Zophar has said to him yesterday that he shouldn't be speaking, that he is in the wrong. He's always done something wrong. And Job is saying, well, I know just as much as you do. And he then repeats back to them many of the same things that they said to him. He's saying, I know that God is just. I know that God is majestic. I know that God is good. I know he's forgiving. But I think that I have a case against him. And he's arguing maybe with a kind of false premise that he has a case he can bring before God. And his friends are arguing against him with a false premise as well. They believe that he's done something to deserve this. And so they're kind of passing each other in their arguments. And Job says something interesting here that I think is important for us to look at. He said, are you defending God with lies? In chapter 13, do you make your dishonest arguments for his sake? What he's saying is that he's accusing Zophar and his friends as saying things about God that are true, but they are slanting them. They're using their own testimony, maybe embellishing a little bit to try to make their point more clear that God punishes the unjust. And he's saying that God will not be mocked. What you are doing is not right, that you are using God's wisdom to judge other people. And then he goes on and defends his case, and he accuses God of writing bitter accusations against him and bringing up all of his sins. He says, you put my feet in stocks, you examine all my paths, you trace all my footprints, I waste away like rotting wood, like a moth-eaten coat. Now that's an example of the false premise that Job is operating out of. He's assuming that God is doing this because he's upset at Job for some unknown reason. Now, God has his reasons, and we'll see this eventually, but Job will never hear his reason because Job needs to learn that God is not doing this against him. He's doing this for him, to teach him something meaningful, to teach him that he doesn't have to trust in his rituals. He needs to trust in the living God. Now, the last thing I want you to see here is this question that Job asks. After he has gone on for verse after verse, saying that he has a case, that he is being abused and used and beaten for no reason. And this is what he says. Can the dead live again? In verse 14 of chapter 14, he says, can the dead live again? If so, this would give me hope through all my years of struggle, and I would eagerly await the release of death. Now that is telling for us, because there is a reality that the dead live again. Jesus says, I have defeated death, and now you get to be with me. And when we are baptized into his death, and we are raised to new life with him. Can the dead live again, Job? The answer is yes. And this is important for us. If so, this would give us hope through all our years of struggle. Now, I know many of us have struggled for years and years, and maybe you're struggling now. Well, guess what? This is not the end. God has a plan for you, and you may not understand what God is doing until you reach glory. But know that the dead live again. You will live with Christ, and all of our tears will be wiped away, and he will make all things new. God bless you. Hope you enjoy this reading.